Episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, good morning. How are you doing, Taylor? Early in the morning, isn't it, for both of us? At least you get
I'm
up
doing
earlier
great.
than I do. You get up earlier than I
try.
do, so yeah. Well,
I don't
today
always succeed.
neither do I. Well, today I'm talking about a very serious subject, and that is the school security issue that was brought up in the last city council meeting. And to put it frankly, I think it's an incredibly bad idea that was proposed by Mr. Stanford and Ms. Payne, and I want to go over why I think it's such an incredibly bad idea. And in the light of the Uvalde shootings, I don't really know how they reach these conclusions, to tell you the truth. But I'll go over that as well. Now, as far as the sponsors go, I'm going to forego the sponsor ads. I have contacted all of them, and they all feel the same, that this is a very serious subject, and they are a bit mystified as to why this approach is being proposed. Also, I did have a conversation with the mayor, and I am at liberty to discuss more or less the general contents of it. Some parts are going to have to keep confidential, but he did return my call, and I respect that. I'm very grateful for that. And at the end, we're going to try to post, if I remember, the address or the link rather, where you, as a listener, as a resident, as a citizen of this community, or a former citizen of this community, even if you hear this and you don't live in the Burleson ISD or Burleson city limits, but you came from here and you're still concerned about what goes on in your hometown, we're going to put the link there. You can email the council members directly and tell them what you think of this idea. And I think that's going to be the most effective way of getting it across. In sum, what happened, kind of what happened on Tuesday night, I was just going about my business. And I started getting texts from a couple of people and said, "Are you watching what's going on in the city council?" And I go, "Well, no, I usually just check it out later if I do at all. Some things are, fairly routine, so I don't grind in on all the details." But they said, "You need to check this out." And they told me what was being discussed, and I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely astounded that they were talking about Mr. Payne and Ms. Payne and Mr. Stanford were talking about doing away with the city's contribution to the school resource officer program, the program that puts police in at least in our secondary schools. And they wanted to replace that with a district police force, similar to what you saw in Uvalde. And we saw how effective that was. So I really thought this was, maybe just conversation, but no, this was a serious proposal that was being put forth by those two members of the city council. And I was very, very upset by that because as a former school teacher, I Lord knows, I know the value of having qualified professional police personnel in the high schools. And yes, the goal of having them in every school in our system, I discussed that about 3 weeks ago, about how that would be a worthwhile goal. However, and a very expensive goal. This is not the solution. This is not the solution. I'm angry, actually, that we're 3 or 4 weeks away from watching the utter, complete failure of a school district police situation down in Uvalde, that this could even be proposed. And is being seen as a solution to the problem. I'm angrier about also the fact that I think that this is also a disingenuous way to try to save a few bucks for the city at the great expense of the school district. This isn't going to save you, Mr. Taxpayer, Miss Taxpayer, one dime, because somebody's going to pick up that tab, and we're all residents at City of Burleson. We're all residents of BISD. And so if they're just shifting their expense from one entity to another, you're not going to save a dime. In fact, it's going to be exceptionally more expensive. And so I don't understand even the logic behind it. And so I am not privy to the thoughts of Mr. Stanford and Ms. Payne, but I have a feeling there's other motivations besides just a few bucks. And I'll stand by that comment, even if it seems somewhat well, I'll just move it on. I'll just the idea that we could have the kind of security that they envision under this plan is ludicrous. The idea we have, what Mr. Stanford wants is every campus to have somebody with a gun on it. This isn't the way to do it. And the idea of having substandard cops, the idea of having maybe old retirees that are working a second job, or maybe having, this post-retirement income, or maybe, people that could qualify for other police departments, protecting our children. Shame on them for thinking that this is going to work. Now I'm going to go over the problems I see very clearly with having district police and also having, the value of having SROs. And I'll start from the beginning. The district police. First of all, like I mentioned, they're going to be substandard. They're going to be guys that are, on their retirement. They're going to be people that didn't get a job in Arlington or couldn't get it and be Burleson PD even. And I think Burleson PD is one of the finest police forces in the DFW area. But they're going to be people that are going to not have the same motivations and the same trainings and the same energy level that these SROs bring to the campuses. It's been proposed in some of the more wacky or Facebook postings that we have civilians, parents or grandfathers, whatever, that have training with guns to monitor the situation. That's even crazier. That's even crazier. Yes, I agree, Ms. Burns. How did in the world is this being proposed? I do not know. That's why I say you need to contact the members of the city council and ask why you're bringing this up, and let them explain their reasoning. And it's not just the whole city council; it's just Mr. Stanford who brought it up and Ms. Payne who supported it. Ask them why they think this is a good idea, and why they think now is a good time to do it, particularly when we saw the utter, complete failure in Uvalde. And we've seen it all over other places as well. But anyway, that's one. I'm going back to the problems with the district police. Another is there's not going to be any authority with these people, particularly if they're civilians. The students won't respect it. They talk about the criminal element in these high schools. Well, for the SROs, they'll tell you the vast majority of their duties doesn't deal with, fortunately, thank God, these kind of mass homicide situations. It's a lot of it is minor discipline related issues or minor misdemeanor related junk, smoking, carrying weed on campus, skipping school, whatever else. District police are not going to have the authority or the ability to handle that, nor will they get the respect that a police badge will bring. If they want to bring, more discipline in the schools, having rent-a-cops is not the way to do it. Having Burleson police with the authority that comes with it and the backing of the law that comes with it will make that happen, more likely to happen. Now, the critics of our system will say, well, there's still all this stuff going on. There's still, drug deals being made and there's still fights being happened. Yes, they are. Welcome to high school. They were doing this when y'all were in high school. When I was in high school, there were fights. There were minor drug transactions in the men's room. There was discipline problems in some classes, blah, blah, blah. We know what goes on at high school. And for the most part, most of us navigated through that. And so the criticism that I read in a couple of these other Facebook pages that they're not stopping being able to, this SROs isn't working is total, complete rubbish. The SROs probably prevent more minor and probably major criminal activity that we'll never be able to quantify because you can't measure what doesn't happen. But we know as an educator who worked in a system with high quality police officers, know that they are a preventative that we'll never really know just how much they prevent, but they are a preventative. Also, when I mentioned the respect factor, this kind of jumps into what I was talking about, the value of SROs. I worked with 3 campus officers that I knew well: Jack Goldman, Jerry Stringer, Mike Alley, some of the finest men that served Burleson PD in this community. And they were more than just a security force. They were a lot more than that. They were role models. They were mentors to many of these troubled young men in particular. They were examples of what law enforcement should be and can be. And for many people, they saw in Goldman and in Stringer and in Alley and in Officer Brad Schaefer over at Centennial. I don't want to forget him. They saw a possibility maybe as in a career in law enforcement. No, maybe they did, or maybe they didn't take on law enforcement, but that's not the point. The point is that they saw a role model with a badge, and they saw with those gentlemen the kind of conduct that professional men that do their jobs and do it properly and appropriately. They saw role models that maybe they didn't have in other areas. And you're not going to get that with a rent-a-cop situation. You're not going to get that with a situation where you did. Let me rephrase. You're not going to get that with a situation where you have a rotating system of people that may or may not have a gun on them. You're not going to have that with somebody who's just putting in the time. These SROs chose to do this. All right. This is not something you get relegated to. This is something that when the opportunity is there, they said, I want to be on that campus to do the things that a police officer does other than just write tickets or, break up fights. They wanted to be there to mentor young people, to show them the proper way of doing business, to provide a secure environment, to have a learning situation that you don't have to worry about walking down the halls or going into the men's rooms or the ladies' rooms. And so for them to be there is the value in and of itself, but they do provide the kind of security that a district police force cannot. And this is where it gets to me too. Miss Payne in particular was advocating basically going to the system because of the expense factor. We could save money, and it was backed up by Mr. Stanford that they could save the city some money. Well, all that would do is transfer the burden onto the school district. So whatever is saved in city expenses will be paid for by school taxes, which, you hear about how high they are, and I pay them. That's a real problem, and I'll have Sean Miner on the show in about 10 days, and I'll ask him about that. But what people don't understand is that the school districts, like any other local institution in the state, local governing institution, do not have the ability to unilaterally raise their incomes. In other words, raise taxes. They can only raise them a very minute percentage. Anything past that has to pass an election. The last time we did this was 10 years ago, 2012, and it failed by 8 votes. But so if the school district is burdened now with this that they have to provide the total expenses for all of this, they're not going to have the money for it. Okay? If they want to comp on every campus, it's going to cost a lot of money, a great deal of money. But the school system cannot raise it on their own. And so they won't be able to raise the money, not just because they don't want to, but I mean, because God knows, I know these board members well. They want school security as badly as any parent, and there are a lot of them are parents, but they want it as badly as anybody else. But they won't have the wherewithal to do it. And so we would be forced to the situation where basically we would rely on volunteers, which is a non-starter, or not have it at all. This is why I get so angry with Mr. Stanford and Miss Payne is that they propose these things as if they're doing the city a favor, but they're going to be doing the city a tremendous disservice by taking away school security. Okay, it is very disingenuous to say, well, this is going to save the city money, and we'll have a police force that's takes care of the school system solely, and these other officers be available for other duties in Burleson and all this other business. Where if we didn't have officers on campus, where a lot of the officers would be called to make calls on, it be the high schools. And that's still what happens, by the way, in these districts that have their own city police or school district police force. I'm sorry, they have their own school district police force. They don't have the authority of a police officer. They don't have the ability to write citations. They don't have the authority to make busts, so to speak. They'll have to still bring in outside PD to do the legal business. Okay. All these district police are good for basically is just monitoring the situation. And if they have a situation, if they have a situation where they need police, they have to call for it. They don't have the authority to do it themselves. But the expense, can you imagine the expense of having our own separate school district police force? We're going to have to duplicate everything, not just the officers and the training, but the equipment and the benefits and the insurance and the headquarters or someplace to land and the radio equipment, I guess, and the vehicles that would have to have. All these things are going to be added expense. We're not going to be able just to create a police force just like that. It would take years to create a district police force. Even if we had the officers today, for which we do not, we still got to equip them and provide cars and provide, the communication equipment and provide the weapons, on and on and on. And it's a massive duplication of expense. And so this idea that we'll be saving money is craziness. And Betty Arbor brings up a good point. How good would the communication be between the two police departments? We saw in Uvalde just how good it was. You had all these armed men sitting around an unlocked door for an hour and a half waiting for somebody to give the order before somebody from outside this process, a Border Patrol agent, said, the hell with this, and went in there and shot the fella. Whereas no one would take responsibility in that Uvalde situation. No one knew who was able to give the orders. When they told the police chief of that school district, that Peter Arredondo, he said, I don't have the authority. You have to wait. I don't know if on and on and on. It was craziness to see and it was tragic and it was criminal what happened in Uvalde, the breakdown of the police force and the school district police. And do we really want to risk that kind of confusion and indecision in these type of situations? Or do we want a clear line of command between Burleson PD and the officers on those campuses? Do we want Billy Cordell and his crew, his leadership team, to be able to directly monitor and hold the men accountable and to be able to coordinate a response? And God forbid if we have a situation like this. And so the idea that we're going to create a duplicate system won't mean twice as good enforcement. What it means is going to be confusion. It'll be buck passing. It was somebody else's responsibility. In other words, it'll be, I thought he was going to do it. Oh, it's not my responsibility. Or you may have a situation where they may totally fail. We may have and the thing is, this happened in Florida about 4 years ago. We had on campus a police officer, I think it was the county, who hid during the shooting at that Plantation, Florida school, at that Margaret Porter High School. He failed. Burleson police won't fail. Okay? Burleson police when they go into this situation, they know what's expected. 2 weeks ago, I had Billy Cordell on this show, and I invite you to go back to that part because we did talk about school resource officers a lot before this even came up. And he said every person he puts on that campus, he makes sure they know what's expected of them. You go back and ask Billy Cordell that and see I asked him that directly, and you see what he said on my show about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. It's in the archives. And he said every officer he puts on that campus know that they may have to put it out there, put it on the line. You're not going to get that with a substandard police force. You're not going to get that with a rented security system. You're not going to get that with somebody who lacks the training or the nerve to take care of a situation like that. To be an SRO is not an easy job. It's a hard job because not only are you required to have a certain conduct about yourself and all this, and to deal with immature teenagers, some of which don't like you merely because you're police, or some of which have issues with authority. But you also have to be able to say that when it gets down to the time of decision making about what do I need to do, when do I need to step in, we're not going to have this. I'm waiting for a janitor's key, or I don't know whose authority it was. Having the school resource officer program is more cost effective, has a unified command. It has a setup already in place, paid for by the taxpayers of this district. We already have the equipment. We have the vehicles. We have the radios and the guns and whatever else we need. And they are more accountable, and they choose to be more accountable. Like I said, and I said before, Jerry and Jack and Mike and Brad Schaefer at Centennial and all the others that I'm not familiar with at the junior highs, they chose to be there. And they chose that knowing that if, God forbid, we have a gun come on campus, they're going to be the first in the line of fire, not waiting for somebody to give them the orders. School security is not negotiable. Now, Mr. Stanford says he wants to have somebody on a campus with a gun. To me, that shows a complete lack of understanding what the school resource officer program is about. Complete and total lack of understanding. As a former police officer, I'm really amazed that he, among anybody on that council, would bring up this idea. And that's why I want you to write your council person, because I'd like for him to explain this. Now, I'm sure he'll go on Joko and give some reason, whatever else, that, why this is a great idea. And that's great, wonderful. It's all BS. It's not, there's nothing really going to work from this. And this idea that this conversation was spontaneous Tuesday night is also BS, because Miss Payne starts jumping in there. Oh, I didn't expect to be talking about this. And then she started rattling off all these facts and data and all this other stuff. And they started comparing us to Joshua, who have their own school system, police. Let me read some of the comments there was on another page where somebody was supporting this. And I want to read the comments that the people of that district said about their own security system. I'm learning. Oops, got the wrong page here. Try it again. There we go. Okay, this was put on another page. It's the writer was supporting the idea of having the school district police, because Joshua has it, and boy, does it work so good. And all these things, terrible things are happening at the high schools, as if that's an indication of that the SRO program's not working. And this author of that post got the response. A woman named Sheila West talks about using Joshua is not smart. We are complaining about not having enough SROs ourselves. Not to mention everything is in-house, and our parents are being told, oh, that's not bullying, as commented by them, and that's not their jurisdiction, what causes parents to not know who to turn to. So again, cops are passing the buck because they don't know who to turn to. They have their own security, so they can't prevent bullying. They can't prevent crimes because they don't have the jurisdiction to do so, or at least that's what they say. Here we have Georgia Right Head in emphasis: do not bring it in-house like Joshua ISD. This has been a nightmare for the past few months. I would recommend looking to Joko Sheriff's Office for help. No one oversees the Joshua ISD Police Department. And she goes on to talk about just how everybody in that system ducks from responsibility. Here's the Familia Arredondo talk about their issues about that there was an assault on one of their children, and they try to deal with the Joshua School Police, the JSD police, without response. Finally, had to contact Johnson County Sheriff's Office, who said it wasn't their jurisdiction. And so they here he had a situation where their child was assaulted in one of the Joshua schools, and everybody said that's that's not our authority. And thank God for Ronnie Johnson, because Ronnie Johnson spelled it out pretty clearly. He took those two to task, and he should have. And I'm proud of Ronnie. I'm proud to know him. Ronnie Johnson has served this community as a business owner, as a board member, as a coach at our high school, and as a city council member. I can't think of nobody in this community that's given more of his time to this community than Ronnie Johnson. And he just tore him up, because as he should, because Ronnie Johnson understood the value of those police officers on those campuses. And the idea that because Mansfield has one, that we could afford one is craziness. We're not near the size of Mansfield. We don't have the resources of Mansfield. We don't have the resources of Fort Worth or Arlington to have their own police systems. I didn't even know Joshua had one until recently. And I don't know where they're getting the money, but they're not getting their money's worth, obviously. But we're not that big. If we ever get to the system where we have multiple high schools and we have, with the size of Arlington and Mansfield, we can have another conversation. But this is craziness to do it right now. We can't afford to do it like they do it. And nor do I want to afford it. Even if we could, I still want Burleson Police, not a separate law enforcement entity that doesn't take responsibility or have the jurisdiction. Every time it gets tough, they pass the buck. And if you think it's just me saying that, I refer back to the comments that the Joshua parents had. Mr. Stanford made the point that TCU and others have police officers and they're well trained and they're highly qualified. Well, maybe they do. But TCU also has a $600 million budget with a huge endowment and ample donors. And so they can afford that. When I go to Dallas Baptist, they have their own police force, but the kids pay for that. It's part of the tuition. It's part of what they raise money for. Burleson doesn't have that ability. We don't charge tuition. We charge taxes, of course, but we don't charge tuition to go to our school. We don't have the ability to post a surcharge for security, nor do we have the ability just to raise the income to make it happen. As I mentioned earlier, we can't make the money work. I get back to the point. Why was this even brought up? Now, if you want to talk about the effectiveness of it, if you want to talk about how we can enhance it, increase the value of it, okay, that's one thing. And if that's the tactic take now that they're getting a pushback on it, they're covering their tracks, because that was not the intent. It wasn't just let's investigate this and make sure we're doing the best thing for our children. That was not the intent. That was to save money. And it's incredible to me that Ms. Payne, of all people, would talk about saving money when she was bellyaching about how much she doesn't get paid for being on the city council in the first place. She wanted to have an increased stipend. So apparently we have money for that, but we don't have money for school security. And then as far as, again, Mr. Stanford, a former police officer who thinks that having a rented service is better than trained police officers, I have to wonder what in the world was he thinking? Anyway, I'm angry about this. I really am, because I'm angry for a lot of reasons. I'm angry this is even brought up. This is incredibly obtuse timing to say we need to change our program now because it might save us some money. And yeah, it'll put a gun on every campus. This plan will work, which won't work. But that's not the point. Is it what? Why now? Did we not see what happened in Uvalde? Did you want to see the 19 children were killed because of indecision and lack of authority and a lack of willingness to encounter this gunman? And we want to replicate that situation here. We want to create the same system that caused that to happen. What are they thinking? I'm serious. When the time comes, this show is over, or you hear it later, or you send it to your friends or whatever else. I just like to know this. I'm reading these comments. Is there, mentioned here, is there a vendetta against BISD? I believe there's some animosity by these two members towards BISD. Yeah, I do, because their friend didn't get on the ballot the first time, and so they're trying to punish the school district. But that's just my opinion. I don't know that. They don't talk to me, and I don't. That's fine with that. And let's also support our friend Billy Cordell. Billy Cordell does a fantastic job, and this come right out of the blue. I don't believe for a moment this was a spontaneous conversation. Mr. Cordell, Officer Cordell, was asked about other things, or he's going to be speaking on other things, and they brought this out of their hat, literally, since that's what Jimmy was wearing at the meeting. And so they're going to go and and basically smash him like that. I just find that to be reprehensible, but that's fine. That's the way it works. Okay, this is going to be a shorter show because I am yeah, because I think I've said what I needed to say, but I am going to sum this up like this. On this City of Burleson webpage, there is a means you can contact all your city council members individually or collectively. And I did that, and I got a phone call from the mayor last night because he does respond to, much to his credit, he does respond to those kind of emails, usually by phone because he prefers to have conversations and write things out and all this other stuff. I am as somewhat at liberty to talk about in general terms the contents of the conversation. I'm not going to quote him directly, but I'm going to put it this way. He wants y'all to know that first and foremost and solely his concern is the security of the children. That he's not going to vote on any plan that he feels like is going to compromise that. And I'm not going to put words in his mouth or say, I know how he'll vote, but I'll put it this way. He knows the situation. We talked about the expense, and that's absolutely true. If we want to expand our SRO program, it's going to cost us money. You bet it is. And we're going to have to ask ourselves, is it worth it? To me, it is. I pay taxes. City taxes, I don't pay city taxes, but I pay school taxes. So it's going to cost me school tax money. It's going to increase or prevent a decrease in taxes. And I'm willing to do it for the security of the schools. And I bet every parent you ask will say the same thing. So we talked about the expense of it, but he also, let's put it this way: the mayor will not vote for anything that decreases the security of the children. Period. And you could read in between the lines how you want to on that. You could ask him directly yourself. He also made it clear that this was not a planned conversation, and it surprised him too. He's always willing to let people speak their mind on the city council, but I can't conceive of Chris Fletcher voting for a plan like this, and I don't think he does either. So your ire, I guess, should not be directed towards him, because I'm quite sure he's not going to do anything to compromise the security of the kids. And he knows the downfalls of this proposed plan of having a school district police. He's not naive enough to think that it's going to be free or cost free. And no one should. It's going to cost us money. I said this before when we were talking about school security issues. It's going to cost us money to have the kind of security you want in your schools. But we're going to have to decide, both as a city and as a school tax, that we're willing to make these sacrifices for the community, for the kids. We talk about it all the time, and there you are. Now, I have no doubt that in the minds of Ms. Payne and Mr. Stanford, they think they're talking about the security of the children as well. And again, I invite you to ask them their thinking on that. I'm not going to say what's on their mind. I'm just saying this is a crazy idea, and it's a wrong-headed idea. And to be frank, I'm getting damn tired of every 2 weeks those two blowing up the city council meetings. I am exhausted. Every 2 weeks we have to endure this kind of crap with some, the tantrums and the shouting because they have some other wild hair to chase. And I'm just tired of it. I want effective leadership, and these two are making it very difficult because they have agendas to pass. So, yeah, my guess is it's gonna be a 5-2 vote. Again, I'm just saying, I'm not gonna put my words in their mouths, but I just know the hearts of these people. Ronnie's made it quite clear he's not gonna vote for it, and I get it. Victoria Johnson has said quite clear. I Dan has said that and by the way, Dan will be a guest on my show Monday. We're gonna talk about this exclusively or extensively, maybe is a better word, but we'll be talking about this. Um, so we'll be talking I'll have Mr. Fletcher on Tuesday. So next Monday and next Tuesday on this show, you'll be able to ask these questions yourself, and they'll be able to explain it, in their own words. Again, let me be clear. If this was an agenda item to talk about, the SRO business and all this other business, and is it working and all this, and we need to look, yeah, okay, that's typical government business. That's the way it is. But to drop this idea in the middle of the meeting, and when it comes to the security of our children, we didn't have the citizens of this community did not have any warning that this was coming in that meeting. They didn't have any possibility of them showing up at that meeting to tell them to their face what a ludicrous idea this was. That's not the way government works. These two brought up this item or pursued this agenda topic, and the citizens of Burleson had no idea that was coming, and they had no ability to speak on it before the meeting started in that 3-minute session, or get on the agenda to talk about it themselves. Now, is it going to pass? No, it's not. But I think it's indicative of the chaos that these two have been bringing to our system. And you can attribute that to whatever motivations you want. I'll leave it up to y'all. But it doesn't matter what the motivations are. The effect is it's causing all sorts of trouble. It's causing all sorts of pain in this community. And I don't mean that as a pun. It's all causing all sorts of dissension within the community. People get on the Facebook and trash people that like Sarah Carlson and others who defend our system. They get on there and rant and rave on their Facebook pages and say the most hateful things. And this is not just an accident. It's a coordinated thing. And the people of Burleson have had enough of y'all. Period. Now, tomorrow I'll have a studio show, and I'll have a guest, and we're going to talk about, and it's Michelle Humphrey of Hotworks, and we're going to talk about these kind of issues because she has concerns as a business owner and a citizen as well, not just about her own business and whatnot, but she has as a citizen. She and I had a long conversation, and she has her concerns, and she's going to be able to share them with y'all. And like I said, Monday I have Dan McClendon, Tuesday I have Chris Fletcher. But I hope you share this with your friends, not just because I need the views or the hits on YouTube or Apple. That's going fine. But I think it's important. And I hope to hear from y'all. Thank you for those who commented. I see several people have commented. I appreciate that very much. At the bottom of the links, Taylor is going to put the link address to how you could contact your city council members. Please do so. Please do so and tell them what you think about this craziness that's going on in the city council and about this idea in particular. And we'll see you tomorrow.